Hey everybody, welcome to Spotter Stats Blog, Chords Musicians Use Most, Part 1. In these two videos, we'll be taking a look at what chords people use the most, or the least, when writing pop songs. Alright, the most important thing to note before we get started is that this is a study of chords used in popular music, as defined by rock critics and myself, I guess. The majority of the data I collected was taken from the Rolling Stone magazine 500 Greatest Songs of All Time survey. Because I figured if I was going to spot big picture tonal trends, stats, I was going to need a large enough and comprehensive enough data source that was decided on and compiled by a whole bunch of music lovers instead of just some guy who really likes grunge era Japanese ska punk 7 inches. We'll do a tonal trends spotter stats on that genre someday, but only after we get enough data. And only after it turns out that I didn't just make that up. So yeah, Rolling Stone, rock, blues, pop, alternative, funk, hip-hop, metal, folk, all that stuff. But unfortunately, it's not going to be a study on classical music trends, and not jazz trends, jazz chord trends either. Alright, first, get ready to take a look at chord usage overall across all songs studied, no matter their tonality. And then, probably more useful, in part 2, we'll break down chords usage as separated into the 3 most common tonalities: major, minor, and blues rock. And real quick, if you don't know what blues rock is, it's basically just a tonality that happened when musicians started to smush together major and minor, mostly majors chords and minor scales. They're just and then someone's like, "Ooh, I'm play minor." Blues rock. So I don't want to oversimplify things too much, but it's like this. See, major and minor have existed separately in human music for at least 1,000 years. Some say longer, like Pythagoras. And blues rock has only been around for 100 years or so. So some people don't think of it yet as its own tonality. But if you're going to simplify all popular music into just 3 categories, there's really no other way to do it that I've thought of anyway. So remember, major, minors, and blues rock. I went minors because the plural is important later. And if you know what I'm talking about, good job. See, sometimes you just got to simplify. Sometimes you just have to focus your binoculars if you want to see the eagle soaring across the sky. The eagle. Also, regarding simplification and focus, the charts we're about to look at only go up to the first 24 most commonly used chord triads in any given key. And 24 chords is only about half the triads you can possibly play in music. The other 24-ish basic chord triads that are available to the musician virtually flatline in terms of how much people use them after this chart I'm about to show you. So for now, just ignore them. Seriously, I only found 1, 2, or none at all of these chord types. Mostly diminished and ogs. Okay, so let's look at the charts.
Okay, welcome to my computer. Here we go. Chord usage across all songs studied. So yeah, here they are. Our first 24 cool kid chord triads people use the most. First 7 are the major diatonics here. 1 major, 2 minor, 3 minor, 4 major, 5 major, 6 minor, 7 diminished. Oh, by the way, diatonic is just a fancy way some musicians say regular. Like the regular chords found in whatever key we're talking about. That's alright. So do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, Mary Poppins notes. Normal notes making up the normal or diatonic chords. Oh, and here's the thing. I'm playing all these chord types in the key of C, mostly because that's the most common key that people teach music in. Mostly because it has no sharps or flats in it. And it's major diatonic normals, that is. Alright, the next 7 on the chart here are the diatonic normal minors. Got 1 minor, 2 diminished, flat 3 major, 4 minor, minor 5, flat 6 major, flat 7 major. People call these 7 minor guys borrowed chords if you use them when you're in a major key. and vice versa. But it's interesting to note that minor keys aren't as notorious for borrowing major diatonic chords as major is for borrowing minor chords. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but we'll save it for another time. Next up, we have the secondary dominants, or secondary 5 chords. 1-7, 2 major, 3 major, 4-7, and then 6 major, and 7 major. These guys are handy little chords, I'm telling you. If you're not using these chords in your music making, you better start, because you're missing out. Alright, they're called secondary 5 chords because they usually resolve down a fifth, like the regular 5 does. But thing is, even though that's what they do a lot, they don't have to in order to be called a secondary chord. And if anyone ever tells you that they do, you tell them to come see me. And I'll be like, hey man, this isn't about rule enforcement. This is about tonal 10 spotting, okay? The only black and whites around here are on the keyboard keys. Everything else is a gray area, dude. Anyways, after that, some miscellaneous honorable mentions. We got flat 2 major and flat 5 major and diminished 1 chords. People play that sometimes. And then 5 augmented. Gotta have 1 augmented in there. You know, like riding around my automobile. It's like that chord. Okay, like I said before, everything past this not pictured kind of flatlines. So, for the lack of a more academic term, we'll just call them the rest of them. If you're curious about the rest of them, I have started a rough draft tonal trend smarts blog about some of these rare chords and where they've been used before. So just be patient. It's in the queue. It's coming up. Okay, so again to review: diatonics, borrowed, secondary, miscellaneous / the rest of them. Now, you certainly don't have to, my dear chord usage knowledge seeker of truth person seeker, but I find that it's pretty helpful to think about all chord triads as being in one of these 4 categories. Some people wouldn't agree with me, and it's fine. It's just a potato thing, you know? Alright, now, I'd like to focus on some of the cool tonal trends happening in this chart. First, the 1 chord predictably tops them all. About 85% of all songs have major 1 chord. Next, the minor 2 and minor 3 chords are posting pretty good odds, about where you'd expect them. 2 a little more played than 3. And the 4 and 5 chords follow close behind the 1 chord at just under 80% of all songs, with the 5 chord a little lower than the 4. More on why that is in a couple of minutes. Here's the 6 minor chord doing his thing around 31% like a champion. Next, check out this drop off. And this next drop off coming up 2 chords from now. These are the diatonic normal diminished chord triads. These guys are used just about as little as the miscellaneous chords and rest of them chords not even on this chart. So just goes to show, just because all your notes are diatonic normal scale degrees, Mary Poppins do re mi's, that doesn't mean people will for sure play you a lot. If you're curious, the main reason you hardly ever see the normal 7 diminished chord alone is because it can be found also within the top half, or as the top half, of a 5-7 chord, which is probably the most popular 4-note chord anybody ever played. Like here, just listen for a second. That's a 5-7 chord. Should be very familiar. Now here's a 4, or here's a 7 diminished. 5-7, 7 diminished. Hard to tell difference, right? But let's move on, because diminished chords being the top halves of 4-note dominant 7 chords is like a topic for its whole own video. I mean, it's a pretty deep rabbit hole we don't need to go down right now. But again, I just thought I'd mention there was a rabbit hole to pique your interest for later. Okay, minor diatonics. The minor 1 chord balances pretty nicely with the major 1 chord at around 18%. So like if you add them up, looks like there's about a 2% surplus, which means that about 2% of songs in the Rolling Stone Greatest Survey use both at some point, both the major one and the minor one. So that's pretty cool. You should try it. 2 diminished, pretty low. Again, flat 3, kicking some butt. Telling you, people love to borrow the flat 3 major when they're in major, especially rockers. 4 minor, not too shabby. 5 minor, seems pretty low. I chalk that up mostly to the fact that in minor, people really like to borrow the major 5 chord. But, you know, in fact, that's where you get the harmonic minor scale from. That's the most popular minor scale, by the way, if you ever heard of that. I mean, some people think it's so trendy to use a major 5 in minor that we shouldn't even call it borrowed anymore. And I'm cool with that. You should be too. I mean, it's just like if you had a stepmom for a long time, and after a while you just stop calling her your stepmom because you know, she's not evil or whatever, and you just call her your mom. Okay. Flat 6 major, also popular chord in both major, minor, and blues rock, and all 3 of those tonalities. And last, for the minor diatonics, the flat 7 chord. Now, it may seem like a surprise spike, but remember, this is a sampling of mostly Rolling Stone mag song picks, with a bias towards rock, blues, and pop. These genres have a tendency to like to play the flat 7 instead of the 5 chord, and that, my friends, is why the 5 chord got beat out by the 4 chord as second most trendy to play in this survey. That's a very important tonal trend that I point out to you. We'll get deeper into the reasons why flat 7 major is so popular in blues and blues rock, pop, everything in the next video called Tonal Trends, Spotter Stats, Chord Usage Part 2. Again, that's the video where we're going to have 3 graph lines instead of just this one. Each of the 3 showing the trends for their specific tonalities, major, minor, and blues rock. And not like here, where we're just showing all chords total. Okay, here, at the secondaries, in the same way as it's hard to distinguish 7 diminished chords from the 5 sevens, secondary 1 and 4 chords are also pretty low on this chart, since in major, the triads are already major. So you can really only spot one or point one out if you hear it has a dominant 7, like this, and then it resolves down a 5th, like 5 chords like to do a lot. If they don't, then they're better explained as just being borrowed chords. And now I know there's some smarties out there right now who are thinking like, hey, I thought this was just a study of chord triads and not their 7s or sharp 11s or inversions or whatever. And hey, you're right, hands up, okay, you got me. But here's the thing, music and tonal trend spotting wouldn't be a creative art if there weren't a few good reasons to break some rules. And this is a good reason. So, this kind of thing is the reason you're even watching this right now. So yeah, secondary 1s and 4s, at their core and like deep down in the cockles of their hearts, really are different chords than their normal counterparts that really are used enough, like used in their own way enough to get the spotlight. So yeah, I mean, again, if some of the ways that we like to spot tonal trends didn't get proven ineffective or incomplete from time to time, it would be way boring, and we probably wouldn't even do it. I mean, that's what creative art is. It's why we like it, because we like to see good rule breaking and good tonal trend breaking too. That's why it's interesting. So yeah, agree with me, disagree, it's all good. Just so long as you know what I'm saying first. Also got to mention that because I added these 2 secondary 7 chords as honorary triads, that means there's really 26 rest of them chords not pictured out of the 48 possible triads that you could play with 12 chromatic notes, for a max total of 50 1-3-5 triads you can play at any given time that I know of. Also that's 50 total triads depending on what you think of inversions of augmented chords. More on that garbage in some Spotter Smarts videos to come. Oh, and if you're wondering, while I'm arguing that secondary 1s and 4s exist, secondary 5 chords don't exist. for the simple reason that if a secondary 5 could exist, it would sound and function exactly the same way a regular diatonic or borrowed 5 did. So there's that. But I don't know, maybe somebody will find one someday and prove me wrong. Like maybe they'll put some notes in a hadron collider or something. The scientists would be like, you know, 3, 2, 1, and they'll press the button and be like, bang, we found one. Yeah. Okay, as we get to the end, just take another look at how we're flatlining here. This flatlining of the other 26 triads not even pictured on here really highlights the last 3 main points I want to make with this video. Number 1, only 16 chord types are used more than 5% of the time. Number 2, only 6 chords are used more than 20% of the time. And number 3, only the 1, 4, 5 major chords make it past the 40% usage mark. So yeah, really makes you think, doesn't it? Seriously though, if this is all really intimidating and you're just like not getting any of this, simplify it first. Just focus on learning about and playing around with the 6 most popular chord types. Then expand to the 16 most popular chord types. And then once you can rifle off those 16 chords like it ain't no thing, start tackling the rest of them. If you want a little help getting them all in your ear and fingers, check out the Spotter Smarts chord calisthenics videos. We got on here sometimes. I'll be putting up a whole bunch of those. You know, in a bunch of different keys too. Also, you know, because like this is the key of C, but all these chord types translate to all the different keys, obviously. Okay, more tonal trends specific to the tonalities of major, minor, and blues rock coming up in the next video called Tonal Trends Spotter Stats Chord Usage Part 2. And thanks for watching, and don't forget to join our mailing list and like us on Facebook and stuff. See you next time!
Flat 7 chord, minor 2, diminished 2, borrowed.